The movie opens up with a harrowing scene of a school attack, with children screaming and paramedics rushing to the area. Among the helpers is a psychiatrist named Dr. Stern, who enters the school and finds a young Wendy traumatized by the experience. Dr. Stern comforts the little girl and promises that everything will be okay. The scene then fast forwards by several years, where an adult Wendy wakes up from her sleep. It is revealed that she's struggling with mental health issues and is taking medication to cope. Wendy lives with her husband Lars and their son Carl in a small house. Although they have a very close bond, every single day is a challenge for them due to their limited finances. Later, we get to know that Wendy works at a diner with a colleague named Elmar. Normally, she is a shy person by nature and always tries to avoid people. But today, she decides to ask her grumpy boss, Angela, about her promotion. Unfortunately, the latter declines it without remorse, despite the fact that Wendy is her best employee. Shortly after, while taking out the trash, Wendy meets a homeless man named Merrick, who asks her for the leftover food. As she obliges, he suddenly mentions, "You are the one," and runs away without giving her any context. What a troll. On her way back home, Wendy is lost in her thoughts when suddenly Merrick startles her from behind. He urges her to stop taking her medication, claiming that they suppress her actual self. As expected, Wendy thinks he is crazy, so to prove that he has superpowers, Merrick jumps off the highway bridge and purposefully gets run over by a vehicle. That proved nothing. Wendy is left in utter disbelief at what she just saw, so immediately she calls the police. The next day, she goes to her therapy session and finds out that Dr. Stern is her new psychiatrist. Wendy shares her encounter with Merrick, but tries to brush it off as a dream. However, Dr. Stern becomes suspicious and decides to amp her dosage of her daily medication. Later, when Wendy returns home, she finds an eviction note on the door, further adding to her stress. The following evening, she once again meets Merrick outside the diner and is taken aback. All this while, she had thought he was merely her imagination, but seeing him face to face after what happened the earlier night, she cannot believe her eyes. Wendy tries to inquire how he is still alive. However, Merrick simply hands her a flyer before fleeing the scene. Because of the encounter, Wendy starts to feel overwhelmed, so she decides to stop taking her medication. The following day, she experiences withdrawal symptoms and finds it hard to concentrate at work. She becomes increasingly irritable and short-tempered. On her way back, Wendy is confronted by a few catcallers, which triggers her temper even more. She insults them nastily, prompting one of the men to lunge towards her. However, Wendy gets angrier by the second and ends up pinning the man on the floor. As the other goons attack her, she amazingly hurls them into the air, several meters away. Wendy, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be fazed and returns home as if nothing has happened. Turns out she has regained her abilities, which had been suppressed by the medication. The movie then cuts to her coworker Elmar having breakfast with his parents. They always encourage him to join university and pursue a career in law, but Elmar refuses. It is revealed that he is fascinated with superhero comics and has no ambition for life. One day at work, Angela finds a broken piece of kitchen equipment and angrily has a go at Wendy. She even threatens to take it out of her paycheck. Unable to contain her anger, Wendy loses it and lifts her boss by the collar, shouting at her to be polite. After she gets an apology, she lets Angela go, but not before warning her to watch out and take care in the future. Elmar also witnesses all of this from nearby, but instead of getting shocked, he seems impressed, confused as to what is happening to her body. Wendy takes out the flyer given to her by Merrick and heads to the address written on it. After a while, she ends up in an abandoned water park, where she finally meets Merrick. He explains that the new symptoms Wendy is experiencing aren't anything wrong, but are instead her true self. He also reveals that they aren't the only ones, and that the government has been prescribing medications to those who have powers in order to suppress them. Even Dr. Stern is involved in the conspiracy. Hearing this, Wendy becomes angry and decides to find the truth. So she makes her way to Dr. Stern's office and breaks in. As Wendy searches through her files, she stumbles upon the shocking discovery that her colleague Elmar is also one of Dr. Stern's patients. Concerned about his well-being, Wendy decides to pay him a visit. She surprises Elmar by climbing through his window and urges him to stop taking the blue pills that suppress his powers. She wants him to embrace his abilities and become a real man. The following day, Wendy's newfound confidence allows her to confront Angela and finally secure the promotion she has been eyeing for so long. Later, Elmar approaches her and reveals that he has stopped taking the pills. He also displays his new power, the ability to generate electricity. The two then decide to celebrate by taking a walk, and along the way, Wendy uses her abilities to rob an ATM machine. They eventually end up dancing and having fun inside a club. There, Wendy spots some guys bothering other women and acting rash, so to teach them a lesson, she, along with Elmar, lure them into the bathroom and beat them to a pulp. After reaching home, Wendy surprises her husband Lars with the money needed to pay off their debts. Meanwhile, it's revealed that one of the dudes who was beaten up inside the club has reported the incident to the police. The officials don't believe that a single woman could have taken on multiple guys, and so they assume that he is crazy. But just then, Dr. Stern shows up at the station and explains to them that the woman is indeed superhuman. One day, Wendy takes Elmar to the abandoned water theme park where they meet Merrick. The latter is wary at first, but soon becomes happy when Elmar showcases his powers by powering up the entire theme park. Following this, Merrick mentions a facility where they keep and run tests on people like them. He explains that from the outside it looks like a psychiatric ward, but deep within, it is a prison. Merrick reveals that he too spent many years inside this desolate prison. Hearing this, Wendy thinks of a plan to rescue the prisoners inside of the facility. She and Elmar also convince Merrick to tag along. Later, upon arriving at the facility, Wendy puts on a disguise and flirts with the guard. She ends up tricking him and ties him up, while Elmar uses his powers to short-circuit the entire system, disabling the cameras. As they make their way to the patient's cells, they are spotted by the guards, who manage to shoot Merrick. However, he is totally unaffected due to his near-invincible body. As the trio runs outside, they are surrounded by a dozen guards, but Elmar electrocutes them in an instant before running away. Wendy is sickened by the violence she just witnessed. She is especially worried that the guards might be dead, but Elmar seems to be unaffected. He instead boasts his abilities and declares his desire to become a superhero. Merrick, however, is furious with Elmar's words and explains that his reckless attitude is what led to people like them being locked up in the first place. He reveals that he once tried to be a hero, which ultimately resulted in the tragic deaths of his wife and daughter. Later, Wendy returns home to find a drunk Lars waiting for her. He's upset that she didn't go to work and immediately assumes that she's been cheating on him. Wendy is confused and doesn't know what to say, but the next morning, in an effort to salvage her relationship with her husband, she lies and admits to having an affair with a colleague from work. However, she also explains that she has ended it. Lars eventually decides to forgive her, but their relationship is strained. Meanwhile, Elmar meets with Dr. Stern and admits that he has been experiencing strange visions lately. He confesses that he dreamt of a homeless person living in an abandoned water park, referring to Merrick and betraying him. The movie then cuts to the water park, where Merrick's hideout is raided by the police, and he is captured. Back at Wendy's house, she is having a backyard party with several friends and acquaintances. Fed up with the recent events, she simply wants to spend some time with her family. However, things take a drastic turn when Elmar shows up uninvited and informs Wendy of Merrick's arrest. He tries to convince her to run away with him and start a new life, but she rejects him and kicks him out of the house. Meanwhile, Lars becomes furious when he sees Elmar leaving and assumes that he is the man Wendy was having an affair with. He confronts her about it, leading to an argument. Wendy, who is unable to continue with her lies any longer, finally reveals her abilities, but Lars isn't convinced. He starts believing that she is delusional. This makes Wendy so angry that she hurts Lars through the coffee table, while her son stares at them in complete shock. The other guests also witness this, and realizing that she has been exposed, Wendy quickly flees the scene. On the other hand, Elmar is consumed by his thirst for power and control. He takes out his frustration on his father and electrocutes him, making him fall to the floor. Wendy, who happens to be nearby, hears the commotion and rushes to help. However, by the time she reaches the old man, he is unresponsive. Elmar again tries to convince Wendy to join forces, but as expected, she refuses. Unfortunately, the decision turns out to be a costly one, as Elmar angrily electrocutes her as well, rendering her unconscious. When she comes to her senses, Wendy finds herself strapped to a bed in a facility with Dr. Stern. The latter informs her that Elmar is on the run, while his father has luckily been resuscitated by the paramedics. Wendy then tries to free herself from the table, while Dr. Stern tells her that it is for her own safety. A flashback shows a young Wendy with her mother in the principal's office. She had been struggling to connect with her classmates, and as a result, the principal confiscated her CD player. No. All of a sudden, Wendy ascends into a fit of rage and lifts the table up with her bare hands. She then launches it with full force towards the principal, killing him brutally. Punch that into your calculator, teach. In the present, Dr. Stern reassures Wendy that she isn't a freak, but just needs special care. So, Wendy is admitted into the same psychiatric ward that she previously broke into. do. Dr. Stern then visits Lars and requests him to bring Wendy's son Carl into her office. She wants to make sure the little boy is not inflicted with any special powers. As days pass by, Wendy is forced to take medication while inside the facility. She also meets Merrick there, but it's clear that he has accepted his fate. One day, Elmar visits Wendy and tells her that they are meant to be together. He also promises to free her from the facility. However, Wendy ignores all of his claims and instead calls the guards for help. Enraged at the betrayal, Elmar announces that he will go after her family and kill them one by one. In the next scene, we get to know that Carl has also been prescribed the blue pills from Dr. Stern. All of a sudden, the power is cut off from their house and Elmar arrives there. Back at the facility, there is a similar power cut, which enables the prisoners to escape, including Wendy. However, once outside, she is confronted by Dr. Stern and a few guards. Things look grim for our protagonist, but out of nowhere, Merrick arrives at the scene and saves Wendy. He bravely fights the guards and subdues them one by one. Unfortunately, in the process, he is shot multiple times. As Merrick is on medication, his powers are sedated, and thus, he peacefully dies, hoping to see his family again. A while later, Wendy makes it home, where she finds her family being held hostage by the crazy Elmar. She tries punching him, but without her powers, it is not of much use. Just then, Lars tosses her a rubber glove so that she can hit Elmar without getting electrocuted. The plan works, and at the same time, Wendy's medication also wears off, and she regains her powers. Using all her strength, she then punches Elmar through the wall and into the the pool, where he electrocutes himself and dies. After the ordeal, Wendy tearfully embraces her family, knowing that it's time for her to leave and protect them from the government. She promises to keep in touch and departs with a heartfelt goodbye. As she walks away, Wendy feels a newfound sense of purpose and determination to take down the corrupt system that had imprisoned her. Years later, we see Wendy as a vigilante, using her powers to fight for justice and protect those who can't protect themselves. She keeps a watchful eye on her family from a distance, always making sure that they're safe and sound. But Wendy's mission is far from over, as she tracks down the ones who had escaped the facility, seeking to bring them to justice and ensure that no one else has to suffer like she did. The post-credits scene of the movie then reveals that Carl has inherited his mother's genes, as he defends himself from his bullies by making them float. Time to float! Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.